So this is the final lesson for the training for WordPress and the page builder when it comes to updating your website. This is the final session, as everything has kind of led up to this point. So it's going to be extremely important for you to, if you have not either gone through or fully understand how WordPress is set up, how the page builder works, and even some of the individual modules. Now, we didn't go through all the modules, just more the mostly used modules, and so but it is going to be important to understand how WordPress and specifically how the page builder is organized, how it's structured, because when you start going into what's considered the visual builder, you're going to have the structural understanding. Otherwise, it's not going to make a lot of sense. Either way, so we'll kind of jump right in. As you've seen in the previous page builder session, you saw how the sections and the rows and everything, and you were able to kind of somewhat visualize it here in regards to sections, individual rows, how the columns work, and even the size, width, and everything. So as we start going into what's called the visual builder, everything has been kind of built in the wireframe view, which is where you're seeing the individual the colored boxes, and they represent what each section is, or each area on the page is. To help move us along and make it a little bit easier to view while you're building, sometimes the visual builder makes things a little bit faster, and you can get a much better idea of kind of what you're building on the fly. So a couple of the icons and buttons that we have not used, we've been mostly working within this section, but up here you're given a few more tools that we have not actually touched, along with the build on the front end. So there's actually going to be two parts to this. One is going to be how to use and view the visual builder within the page edit screen, and the other option is going to be editing a page while you're specifically on it. They look similar, they'll function similar, but it is two different ways of looking at it. It's going to be really up to you what you find is going to be the easiest to manage. So what we'll do is we will, I'm going to start with the page view. So let's say, for instance, now we're editing the page here. I want to see what this specifically looks like rendered out. So if I click on the desktop view, it will then bring up a visual representation of really what that page entails. So it looks like we're actually on the page, but really we're still in WordPress, along with some of the basic details like the title and everything. But everything else is down here below. Now what you'll notice pretty quickly is as you start hovering over, you'll see that the different colored areas are now accessible. So instead of us seeing the wireframe view, this is the visual representation of that. So if I need to edit the section, I can then click the cog on the section and be able to adjust everything on this, similar to how we did before. Same thing with the columns or the row along with the individual columns. So here you can see that there's one single row, but then it has the two columns in here, so we can then adjust each individual column if we want to. Just by giving, say if I just throw a border on here, you'll see that the border starts showing up. And you can see as you're working with it, it does adjust on the fly while you're working on it, which is great because now you can adjust specifically. It's very helpful when it comes to working on the spacing. So to say, okay, how much space do I really want? So I'm going to give myself some padding. So if I bring this down, you'll see that the row setting starts adding, across the board. You'll see it start adding padding there. And if we want to do the individual column, and I want to give this title a little bit more space, I can then adjust that individually. And you can see it makes things much easier to be able to see, okay, instead of saying, okay, well, I've got to figure out exactly 37 pixels, now you can actually see and adjust accordingly. Say this is a little bit too close on the left and right side. I can then, add, let's say this, put it to 35 and 35 here, 32, and you can see that we've added a little more padding in there. So you can see kind of how that works. Same thing with when it comes to buttons. Everything works basically the same as you did before, where you can adjust the button, change the button size, but now you can actually see the representation of how large and how small you can actually make these guys. So extremely powerful, but at the same time, without understanding how things work up to this point, it would make it really, really difficult to fully grasp kind of what's going on. Same thing with adding. So if you want to add a new section, all the same instructions are still the same across the board. So if you add a 2-column, let's say I want to add a call to action, everything gets built right here, so you can basically see how you want those individual modules to work. And then same thing with the dragging and dropping still works. I will say, and this has been over the years of experience for me, is that this does require a lot of resources from the browser. So there are going to be times that things don't quite work exactly like you would expect. There have been times where I've tried to drag something and it bounces between these two, and I'm trying to get it, sit between the two, and it doesn't. You can see where it has the little gray area to show this is kind of where it's going. Sometimes that shows up, sometimes it doesn't. Like I have to get things specifically right over it. Sometimes even putting it under one may end up putting it on a different one. So you can see here it just automatically created a 4th column, which we don't want to do. So it can act a little funny on occasion. What I've done several times is just gone back to wireframe view and then gone back to the desktop view. Nothing is lost. Everything stays the same until you either save it or you leave the page. Everything is still waiting for you. It'll even show you the wireframe representation. So I've added this extra section along with the module here. If I go back to the wireframe view, this is that section here. So it makes things a lot easier to visualize it, but then also edit it. And if things kind of go awry, just know that sometimes the dragging and dropping does work, it doesn't work. It really depends. I mean, we use Chrome a lot of times for testing. It tends to be the browser of choice when it comes to testing these type of things. So I would recommend at least using Chrome, Google Chrome as your browser. It can usually handle this type of processing. There'll be times where things may look a little different. So if I go down here at the bottom, there are some additional tools that can come up. They're not coming up now. That will allow you to adjust the type of the type of view. So whether it be a hover view, I'm trying to actually pull it up to see. There we go. So now we're in kind of a click view where things you're not really seeing anything. You're seeing kind of the outline of it, and so you have to actually click on them first to see, okay, does this, you can see things just aren't quite the same. And so there are different, and it can kind of get really wonky pretty quickly. So just make sure you understand that you can always undo everything, or if you need to cancel out, just hit the refresh button, it'll ask you. So just be careful with it and be patient with it. That's all I'm saying. We use it all the time. I would say 95% of the time I'm using the visual view as I'm kind of building and editing a page, just so I can get a visual feedback on how it's actually looking real time. But there are times it can act a little funny. So just be aware of that. A couple of things that you also want to look at is, what's nice is that we're on the desktop view. We can also look at how it looks on tablet and mobile view. So it'll give you a mobile representation. You can even give it specific, if you have specific devices you're trying to do, this is a way to do that, to be able to see, okay, is this going to be on an iPad? Or is it going to be on iPhone? Because the different changes, the Galaxy, all of them have their own resolution. So this will also give you that representation to see, okay, how are we looking when it comes to a mobile view, specifically the desktop view. And then if you want to look at the mobile view, you can see, okay, what does it specifically look like? It's like, okay, well, here at this point, if I'm imagining this being on a phone, things are looking a little interesting. So that's when I would go through and start adjusting items based off the different sizes. So I see that this is a heading 1 in H1. So I'm going to adjust the heading 1 only for iPhone view. So I'm going to change the heading text, and I'm going to click on the little mobile view here and make sure that the mobile view is attached or is activated, and adjust this accordingly. So I'm going to bring this down a little bit so that way it's there. That looks a little better. But on the tablet view, it will still look the same as it does on the desktop view. So we can then adjust each of these items based off of their different sizes, which is extremely helpful, especially when it comes to specific things that may look a little strange. And without having to go back and forth and seeing, okay, how does this look here? How does this look here? I mean, give an example here. We've got a lot of space between the SEO marketing and the body copy. So I'm going to close this out. I'm going to take a look at and see where we're specifically, what may be the issue here. It looks like there may be some padding on here that may be involved. But now it may look fine on desktop view because we're like, okay, this is exactly what we want to look on desktop view. You can see there's just not a lot of spacing right here. It looks great. But then when you start getting into the mobile view, that's when things get a little bit different, and you have to go and start making those changes individually, so that way things just don't look, bad. And it can definitely help by adjusting things here and there, so it looks a little bit better across all views. Now, that's, like I said, it's a really basic overview. You should already know kind of how everything else works in regards to how each of the sections work and that sort of thing. Now, the second part would be looking at it from the build on the front end. So I'm just going to hit refresh here so that way it doesn't save anything. Go back to where we were. Now, instead of clicking on the desktop view, I'm going to go and build on the front end. And what it's really going to do is actually going to load up the page fully as if you were looking at it, but it's still going to give you your handles. So you can see this looks like the original page. When I go to this, it's pretty much identical. This is the live page, and this is the editing page, and everything's still the same. You just have your controls here, so everything basically runs the same. Now it's going to be up to you kind of how you want to work. If you prefer to work on the WordPress side, or if you want to work on the front end side, we're using the full visual builder. What's nice is that if you have multiple pages, you have the ability to be able to edit those pages while being logged in. So if I go back to my pages here, and I'm not editing that page any longer, but if if I go and actually navigate to a specific page, so if I go to the test page and I go back to the home page, I can enable this visual builder, and it will then edit that page in the visual builder directly from me going to that page directly. So I don't have to necessarily go to WordPress, go to pages, try to find that page I'm working on, editing it, and then hitting the desktop. I can just navigate right to that page, click on the edit and visual builder, and it brings up the page directly. Again, just understand that depending on how long your page is, if you have plugins that are running, short codes that are on there that are dynamically adding things, you will see that it can take a little bit of time to load this up. It's not going to be nearly as fast as loading it up, let's say the wireframe view. But when it comes to the ease of use, it can take a little time. Here's the little three dots down here, give you kind of a few more tools that we're looking at. For instance, you can then pull up the different views. So let's say I want to look at it on tablet view. These in mobile view, all within the visual builder. So, and even if you needed to, you can go to the wireframe view and actually build it directly on here. So you, if that needs to go a little bit faster, if you have any issues dragging and dropping things, find that it's a lot easier to drag and drop things to, in the wireframe view than it is trying to, drag these guys up and down, because what you can see is that if things go off the screen and you're trying to drag this guy down, you're like, okay, I need it to fit right here. Sometimes that goes smoothly, sometimes it doesn't. Again, that's just gonna be for you to try and test, and we'll see. The other thing that I was mentioning was in regards to the hover and click view. If you click on this little three dots here, you do see some options here. Sometimes when you load it up, it will want to do click view or click mode. It makes it a little bit difficult. So I'll show you the example. So right now we're in hover mode, meaning if I hover over any of these items, it brings up what is that specific module or that that row or whatnot. If I go and click those three buttons here, or the three dots, and then change it to click mode, you'll see whenever I change that, you'll see it. I can't see any of the settings here until I click. So if I click on one, click, you'll see now it brings up the settings for that specific one. Clicking on the other, you just sit there and just click on each one based off of what you want to change. And it looks like, I guess, if you click on the module, it brings up everything in that specific. Basically, it's the parent and up. So some people prefer it this way just because of the fact that it keeps it from loading up all these different things at the same time. It's very similar for me. I just prefer the hover mode. I'm not sure if I've ever even tried the grid mode before. Oh, that shows everything. So it's a bit overwhelming, but if that's what you prefer, then by all means, you can make those changes however you want to work with it. And then you do have some other little options here, but most of it is going to be kind of more. I haven't really even worked with them very much. So history, state, those type of things you can explore. You want it'd be best to do that exploration while you're on a test page as opposed to a live site or the live page that you've got going on, and understand that as you're making these changes, it is not happening live on the site. Not until you hit the save button or you do a Control S or Command S, depending on if you're a Windows or a Mac. None of these changes will happen. So I can move this page all around, and though it looks like it's actually on the site, these are just revisions that have not been saved yet. Until you hit save, does it actually go live on the site. So I can erase half this page, leave it up all night long, and on the main site, what everybody else sees, it's still looking exactly normal. So, and then you still have your revisions and that sort of thing that you have available to you, which you looked at in the WordPress training. So that's basically it. It's simple to use. It's extremely helpful. Just know that it may take a little trial and error to try things out, and then and just hopefully it will work best for y'all. So again, if y'all have any questions or any concerns or needed additional information, just contact us at support@620studio.com, and happy designing. Thanks.